Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew, man? We're back today. Hey, we got the terrifying, insane Asylum experiments. If you had the opportunity to work at an insane asylum, would you?
No.
Why? They need help.
Yeah, get somebody else to help.
Get somebody else to do it.
I'm good.
What's wrong with working at an insane asylum?
I just don't want to.
I'm saying why? Like, please.
I've never had a desire to, and I don't have one today. Still.
I'm saying like just.
I just told you. I don't know what you want from me.
I'm saying somebody approach you and say, "Hey, we need some assistance."
Not interested.
Would you volunteer?
No.
It got to be a reason why.
Sometimes it just don't have to be a reason.
It's always a reason.
Sometimes it's just what it is. No.
It's always a reason, man.
No.
Me personally, nah. But like them people might scare me a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
I ain't thinking about they scaring me, and now I just.
Would you work at a prison?
No, them inmates in there have
same thing.
Half
of the time, it's the same. It's the same.
I think it's a little different.
No, I'm saying half of the time being in prison is the same as an insane asylum.
I don't know. I think they
from the stories I've heard, you know what I'm saying, with my mom, my sisters, so their dad, cousin, everybody working at the prison.
Okay.
Nah, get somebody else
to
do
do it. What you said?
My cousin, he deal fast. I said, golly. And they ain't heard nothing. My mom was trying to contact, she couldn't get in contact with him or nothing. He just stopped coming and then won't answer nobody's phone. I said, what the hell? Come to find out they asked him, you know what I'm saying?
I was say somebody must have had asked him to do
and then they told him if he ain't bring it, they were going to do something to him. My other cousin, she got caught up bringing in stuff. Yeah, I ain't got time for it, man. Hey, make sure you check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go. If you want to first support, you got to do it. Check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's visuals.
Like it with a thumbs up.
Hey, man, let go. Let's see what it's about. Yo.
Let's start with the ones that were terrifying and slowly work our way towards the ones that were worse than death. Number 12, rotational therapy. Rotational therapy was heavily used in the US and Europe from the 18th to 19th century and had to be one of the worst experiments ever done in an attempt to cure mental illness. Here, patients were placed on a chair, strapped in, and spun endlessly in circles. The speed would alternate every so often from a few turns to 100 rotations per minute. Now, of course, for the guy on the chair, this was absolute torture. But for the guy on the lever, this was a great way to tone the biceps. The spinning quickly caused patients to become so disoriented that they would continuously vomit. But if they were one of the lucky few, they would simply pass out and wake up feeling well rested. The reasoning behind the experiment was based on the belief that inducing nausea and dizziness through rapid rotation could reset the mind and calm patients. Number 11, moral therapy. Now, at first glance, moral therapy doesn't sound too bad. After all, it's simply punishing a person in a way you see fit for doing something wrong or breaking the rules. Moral therapy was heavily used in insane asylums from the 18th to 19th century. Now, the real problem was that mental asylum patients weren't very good at following strict rules, since many of them would simply forget the rules or weren't capable of learning from their mistakes. So they would continuously be punished back to back to back, which I could only imagine must have been incredibly frustrating, since nobody likes to break a sweat at work. But let's cover the most common punishments that were given. Patients were severely beaten. They were tossed in cells for long periods of time and denied food. They were restrained. They were forced to eat an entire bag of circus peanuts. They received cold water treatment.
Yeah, that's punishment. A whole bag of circus peanuts with water or without. Now, without water, boy, that's torture. Without, you tell me circus peanuts without water? Goddamn, boy, my mouth gonna be dry. That nasty thing. You like circus peanuts, don't you?
They were forced to eat an entire bag of circus peanuts. They received cold water treatment. And of course, they were placed on rotating chairs like we previously covered. Now, the real danger with this method was that workers could subject patients to whatever discipline they wanted at any given time with little oversight. Number 10, hydrotherapy. Hydrotherapy was yet another terrifying experiment that was used in the US and Europe from the 18th to 20th century. There were many methods, but I'll just cover the most common ones. Beginning with the bath of surprise. Patients patients were placed on a wooden bridge and told to walk across it. As they began to cross, a trapdoor would suddenly open, sending them free falling into a cold lake below. This was supposedly designed to catch the person off guard in the hopes it would reset their mental state, which really goes to show that even in the darkest of places, there's always room for comedy. Next, the dunking baths. Patients were placed in a large cage, strapped in, and slowly submerged in a freezing cold lake. This was repeated until the patient was visibly on the verge of hypothermia, which was seen as a sign that the treatment was working. Then there was the wet towel treatment. Patients were tightly wrapped in ice-cold wet towels from head to toe and remained wrapped for hours. And
You might like that. Get rid of a headache. But then send your body into shock. My bad, yeah. You said hours, you know what I'm saying? That might be cool for like a little 5 or 10 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Send your body through a little shock and wake it up. But for hours, it's the room cold too. Nah, if the room hot, cool. This thing gonna warm up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
I don't want it to be hot.
I'm saying if I do that and then the temp, my body temp and the outside
Too
temp.
much going on. It's hot in the room. The towel ice cold, but that's too much.
In the summertime, that's magic for a lot of people. Yeah, think about it. Think about it. A hot sunny day, wrap me up in a cold towel, throw me away.
And finally, the long baths. Patients were submerged in water with only their head sticking out and left inside for hours or even days. Of course, eventually straps were added to keep them in place, since they couldn't risk anyone enjoying it. The reasoning behind hydrotherapy was the belief that water could induce relaxation, lower stress and anxiety, and promote healing. Today, we know that this only works when a person chooses to get in the water, not when another person tells you. Number 9. Solitary confinement. Isolation cells were heavily used in the US and Europe from the 18th to 19th century. Patients were placed alone in a room and left there for hours or even days. And since many were suffering from severe mental illness, they often had no idea what was happening. Consumed by fear, some began to violently throw themselves against the walls in desperate attempts to escape, severely injuring themselves in the process. By the end of the 18th century, straitjackets had become widely available and were placed on patients before they were thrown into the cells. But again, the jackets didn't stop them from throwing themselves at the walls and getting injured, which really showed the workers. Not wanting to be made a fool of, asylums began converting isolation cells into padded rooms, which finally reduced self-injury, and patients could now be left inside more frequently and for longer periods of time. Number 8. Tranquilizing chairs. The tranquilizing chair was one of the most popular devices used in the US from the 18th through the early 19th century. Here, patients were placed in a chair and had their legs, arms, chest, and head tightly strapped down, preventing any movement. The chair was also equipped with a bucket to catch any human waste. A small box was then placed over the person's head, allowing them to see only what was directly in front of them. They were left alone in the chair for a few hours, but sometimes for as long as several days. Dr. Benjamin Rush was the man who invented the device. He believed that insanity was caused by disrupted blood circulation or sensory overload. So by preventing the patient from using their muscles, he thought all blood circulation would redirect to the brain and over time cure mental illness.
You see how all these people they deem as being smart back then? You just call them slow now. You slow than a motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
I think I was necessarily. I'd say
he probably like he was a smart man. He knows what he's doing. No,
that's insane, and to an extreme, because that's some crazy stuff. Oh, we're gonna strap your legs, your arms, your head, your chest, put a box over your head,
how they knew how to do?
Sit you in a chair for days. Oh, and put a bucket under you to catch. No.
All this shit is just some bunch of slow ass people that's got control.
But yeah,
that's all it is. Because even putting somebody in some water for days, strapped, I can't move. The fuck, they're gonna make me more pissed off, and I really ain't gonna. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, believe it or not, I was a victim of this method and miraculously lived to tell my story. When I was a kid, I was placed in one of these devices. My legs, arms, chest, and head were tightly strapped down. I vividly remember crying out to the world for someone to save me. only to have a device placed in my mouth, keeping it open and preventing me from screaming. Now, of course, once my teeth had been cleaned, I was unstrapped and let go. Number 7, restraint
Oh man, them dentist stories back in the day used to be crazy, bro. I still get flashbacks from going to the dentist as a kid.
I used to love going to the dentist as a kid.
I used to cry.
Now
all
I'm more
the time.
terrified of going to the dentist.
I used to cry a lot going to the dentist.
I used to love going to the dentist.
Because the numbing pain didn't work on me. So,
The numbing
like medicine and stuff.
medicine.
Like they used to try to laugh and get like the little gas they put in.
And it helped.
None of that stuff worked, bro.
Which is bad.
How's that just you just bad because it ain't work on you? Like what kind of
Bad.
sense does that make?
The bad kids, that stuff don't be working on the bad kids.
Who would work on you?
Yeah.
That's why all y'all some damn druggies now. They've been drugging y'all up and y'all just been falling for me. It ain't work on me. That's my own. Man, I remember the first time I got high. I was 5 years old. The doctor came, put that gas on my. I said, "Ooh, I always been chasing that feeling ever since." That's all y'all look
cages.
cracky.
Restraint cages were used from the 19th to 20th century, and they're exactly what they sound like. Patients were placed inside metal or wooden cages for long periods of time, in the hopes that they would take that time to reflect on their behavior or the bad decisions they had made. But the only issue was, the majority of insane asylum patients were not capable of doing that. So instead, they spent their time in the cages, becoming more insane. Here's what the cages look like. Some were a bit larger, allowing the person to take a few steps.
That ain't number some. That's them slave cages
I need more.
that they redesigned to insane asylums. That's how they used to lock them up when they used to come through the auctions. I got it off in a second.
Child, a few steps and I'm on
Got
a
that-
little bit more room than that.
Honestly, your ancestors didn't have enough room. And there
While
used to be
others
2 or
were
3
so
of 'em in
tightly
there.
confined that the person could hardly even move. But get this, the time spent in these barbaric cages would depend on the severity of the patient's condition, meaning the crazier the person was, the longer they remained inside.
longer.
Number 6, bloodletting. Anyone who's been around my channel should be very familiar with bloodletting, since
Yep.
I covered it in this video, but I'll touch on it quickly here. Bloodletting was one of the most popular and horrific medical practices in history, used in many countries from ancient times up to the early 20th century. Here, patients were poked with a blade to remove the bad blood from their bodies, which was believed to cause illness. The severity of the patient's illness would dictate just how much blood was removed and how often. The worse you were, the more they drained. Since mental asylum patients were seen as very sick, it was recommended to drain them to the consistency of a raisin. But after a few sessions, it became obvious that the patient's condition was not improving. So naturally, doctors came to the logical solution to simply drain more. Which of course made things a lot worse, causing even more deaths due to infections and blood loss. Number 5, fever therapy. Fever therapy was commonly used in the US and Europe during the 20th century. Here, a patient would be injected with malaria to induce a high fever, sending the patient into a thrilling game of life and death for a couple of weeks. Now, if the patient was one of the lucky few who made a full recovery, they would be rewarded with another dose of malaria, inducing fever once again. This was done 8 to 12 times,
8 to
back to
12.
back, which means a patient could remain in an endless cycle of high fevers for around 6 months. But as the bodies piled up, doctors were forced to come to the realization that this method simply didn't work. Not because it was ineffective, but because it must have been injected into the wrong body part. So they began to inject malaria-contaminated blood directly into the person's brain. Over 1,000 patients received this terrifying treatment, and sadly, around 15% of them died directly linked to this experiment. The theory behind this was that many diseases were eliminated from the body after a person has a fever, so they figured that mental illness could also be cured the same way. Number 4, insulin shock therapy. Insulin shock therapy, also known as insulin coma therapy, was used in many countries around the world, like the US, Canada, UK, China, and Korea, from the 1920s to the 1950s. Here, mentally ill patients were placed on a bed and were injected with large doses of insulin, causing them to become hypoglycemic and slip into a coma. But the scary part was that many patients would shake or thrash around so violently after receiving their injection that they would dislocate joints or break bones. After a few hours had passed, the patient would eventually recover and wake up, just to receive another dose the following day. This would continue on a daily basis for months. There was even a report of a patient who received this treatment for over 2 years. Now, surprisingly, many patients developed obesity thanks to glycogen storage disease, triggered by the daily insulin injections, which is just pathetic. Transforming their bodies by injecting, instead of achieving it the all-natural way. But sadly, obesity and seizures were not the only dangers. Some patients had it much worse. Many of them died while in a coma or suffered severe brain damage. But believe it or not, doctors would take what they could get and saw brain damage as an overall success. After all, the patients completely stopped talking to themselves, or really to anyone ever again. The theory behind the operation was that comas were believed to be able to jolt patients out of psychosis and cure them from mental illness. Number 3, electroconvulsive therapy. Electroconvulsive therapy was heavily used around the world from the 19th to the 20th century. In the 1930s, 2 Italian psychiatrists named Ugo Cerletti and Lucio Bini observed that pigs would become extremely calm after receiving an electrically induced seizure. So they figured, why not try this on humans? They first tried it on a patient who was suffering from schizophrenia. And just like the pig, the person woke up from their seizure completely relaxed. So the experiment was deemed promising. The news quickly spread and soon doctors in psych wards around the world began experimenting with different machines and varying power outputs. But let's cover what the most common procedures look like. Patients were brought into a room, strapped to a bed, chair, or table. A rubber wedge would then be placed in their mouths to prevent them from biting off their tongues. Electrodes would be attached to their temples, and with a flip of a switch, the power was activated and the person was shocked. The electricity would eventually cause the patient to go into a seizure that could last for several minutes. But here's where things get even darker. Many of these patients remained fully awake during the entirety of the procedure, and I could only imagine the levels of fear that this would bring. The experiment would be conducted on a daily basis for weeks or even months, with some unlucky patients receiving multiple sessions per day. Electroconvulsive therapy was seen as being extremely successful, since most patients were so terrified of the procedure that they outright refused to do anything throughout the day, in fear of being punished and dragged back. The unlucky patients who received the treatment would live the rest of their lives with severe PTSD and were never the same again. Number 2, Trephination.
What was the point?
I don't think nobody would, though.
What you said?
You do that to anybody, I think anybody... Yeah, I'll be quiet. I won't bother nobody.
What you said? I won't say a word.
PTSD and were never the same again. Number 2, Trephination. Trephination was a procedure that was performed in many countries from ancient times up to the 19th century. Many people volunteered to have the procedure done, while others were forced. The procedure began by having the person sit in a chair or strapped down. Then someone would begin to drill a hole in their head. The holes varied in size, ranging from that of a small pencil to a tennis ball. The procedure was believed to cure chronic headaches and boost mental clarity by releasing unwanted pressure in the skull. Later on, during the 19th and 20th centuries, the procedure was brought into insane asylums and performed on patients. But this time, it was because they believed that a demon or evil spirit was trapped in the person's head, and the only way to help them was drilling a hole in the skull, allowing the demon to escape. Sadly, this was before the invention of the Ouija board, so simply asking them to leave wasn't yet an option. Many people who received the operation later died from infection. But of course, science moves on and the operations continued. Throughout history, people continued to experiment with different tools like drills, saws, and even hammers. The hole was even placed on every imaginable location on the skull. Then of course, some show-offs took it too far and began to experiment with different shapes. Number 1, lobotomies. Lobotomies are hands down the most terrifying experiment ever done. It all began in 1935 when a Portuguese neurologist named Antonio Mones began to experiment on patients by drilling holes in their skulls. But it didn't end there. He then began pumping alcohol into the skull, completely destroying brain tissue. Thanks to the severed brain connections, the patient's behavior drastically changed, and the operation was deemed a success. But Monas would take it a step further when he began to use a tool called a leucotome, which looked like this. He used it to sever and remove chunks of tissue from the frontal lobe, again, causing the patient's behavior to permanently change. Many patients would also lose the ability to move body parts, like their arms, legs, or even their face. Surprisingly, in 1949, Monas won the Nobel Prize for discovering the lobotomy procedure, and many doctors from around the world began experimenting with it. Now, perhaps the most famous doctor in history to ever perform lobotomies has to be Walter Freeman, an absolute maniac. Freeman single-handedly performed over 4,000 lobotomies across the US from 1936 to 1967. Eventually, he created his own lobotomy method, not because it was better in any way, but because it was quicker. He called it the ice pick lobotomy, where he would insert an ice pick directly into the patient's eye socket, then hammer it into the person's brain, scrambling the person's frontal lobe. Now, you're probably wondering, how could he possibly know which part of the brain he was scrambling if he couldn't even see? Well, he liked to go by feel. And as you can imagine, many patients quickly died during or after the procedure. But for those who were lucky enough to survive, one thing was certain: they were never the same again.
Never.
With many losing the ability to function independently. But here's where things get even crazier. Lobotomies became so popular thanks to Freeman's aggressive marketing and miraculous claims that regular people began to seek him out and pay for the operation. But that is a story for another day. In the end, it's estimated that over 100,000 lobotomies were performed in insane asylums across the world from the 1950s to the 1960s, and it remains one of the most experiments in all of history.
And y'all wonder why them insane asylums be haunted. Them folks was tortured, bro.
What you said? Because that is
Yeah,
straight.
I'll come back and hunt your ass too. Ooh,
Every
bitch,
day.
you thought.
Every day.
Ooh, bitch, you thought. We come to get your ass. We coming to get torture your ass too. You to be too bullshit there. I'll go for you. I'm telling you, that's what I'll do. What about you?
I said I'd do the same. I don't know if I sound like that, but yeah.
Oh, you fucking motherfucker. Ooh, y'all be fucked up.
Okay.
Ooh, I don't like y'all. Get out of here. Ooh, I'ma fuck your mind up too.
I'm gonna have to drive you crazy.
Tell you, you thought I was crazy. You look who's crazy now. That's why they be putting people around. Hey, you see me, bitch? That's why them trust be haunted. I don't blame them. Oh man, hey,
Something wrong with you.
y'all spell us up in the comments, man. Let us know y'all thoughts in the comment section down below for us. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Kid and C.
We out.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar, 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 dollar.